10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good afternoon. My group members and I were going to be explaining our integrated science unit of work. My group members are Lionel Palacio, Efrain Briceño, Natalia Cocom, and myself, Judith Rivas. Our integrated science unit of work is based on second farm. Our time frame is from the 3rd to the 28th of April, 4 weeks. Our unit topic theme is science and the environment. Some general goals are cognitive. Students will be able to recognize the cell as the building block of all living matter and that organisms depend on each other in a variety of ways. Psychomotor. Students will be able to create storybooks on the concepts covered and create a public service campaign to educate their communities on preventing pollution through reducing, reusing, and recycling. And the affective domain. Students will be able to appreciate and realize that to have a fertile environment, they need to make certain changes to decrease and ultimately eliminate the dangers caused to Earth by humans. Essential questions asked during the unit of work. 1. What are the similarities and differences between the plant and animal cell? 2. What is the meaning of the term ecology? 3. What are the differences between the physical and biotical environment? 4. How is energy lost through each level of the food chain? And finally, question 5. What are the activities of man that can make an impact on the ecosystem?
Today we are entering into our new unit of work, and we will be dealing with the cells, plant and animal cells, as the first concept for this unit of work. I am your host, teacher Natalia Cocom. During this week, we will be talking about cells, drawing and labeling cells, and comparing both animal and plant cells. In addition, we will be introducing the topic of living things and their classification for the upcoming topics in week 2. In order to teach this topic, I will be using the 5E model of instruction by first engaging students, use questioning techniques to elicit answers from them. We will also use that to explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate throughout the lesson. At the beginning, I will be using the Did You Know questioning technique about how to make a microscope using wire and petroleum jelly. That will be used to engage the students from the beginning of the lessons. Using questioning techniques to elicit responses concerning cells and their view of cells is another activity that will be done. Next, I will be showing pictures of different types of plants and animal cells using a PowerPoint. Another activity that I will be doing for students is for the students to label the posters before the lesson begins to test their previous knowledge. Throughout the lesson, we will revisit the poster to check that labels were placed correctly. One cooperative learning tool, which is Roundtable, will be used to compare and contrast cells, and the team's evaluation will be to construct a table to show the comparison between these cells. In order for us to explain the functions of organelles, another activity sheet with definitions will be given to prevent a lot of note-taking. This way, students will be more engaged in the lessons. Activities like games, which is the labels will be given to students at random, and they will be placing those parts on the posters, and they will also be given the functions for those parts or cell organelles. There will also be word searches and crossword puzzles, which will be used during the first week to keep up the tempo of the classes. Lastly, students will be placed into groups to classify things in their environment and to brainstorm the 5 kingdoms of living things with examples. This will be the introduction to the upcoming topic of ecology. For a final assessment, other assessments will be given throughout the lesson, and the final assessment will be for a project that will be done in groups, and they will be constructing a 3D model of either a plant or an animal cell. A rubric will be given to them, and a time and date will be given that they will be able to complete the model. And that is the end of the first week of the unit of work for year 2 on cells.
Students are aware and familiarized that a cell is a basic unit of all living things. Students have identified animal and plant cells. They have classified living organisms into their appropriate kingdoms. They have explained and differentiated between the different kingdoms through their characteristics. All of this was possible on week 1 with various activities that engaged students during this week. However, we move to week 2. During this week 2, I, Efren Briseño, will be explaining more in detail this unit of work. Subtopic for week 2: ecology, biotical, physical environment. A habitat is a concept that comes along with this week. It is defined as the natural home of an organism where it lives and reproduces. Some examples of habitats are ponds, rock, pools, trees, and even the bodies of a large animal where tiny insect or microscopic animal lives. A wide variety of living organism is found in a habitat. As objectives for this week, students will be able to 1. Identify a habitat of an organism. 2. Explain the importance of various physical factors to the life of organism in a given habitat. And lastly, identify instances where living organism depends on one another for food, shelter, and protection. This course comes accompanied by a guided discovery method. Teaching strategies that would come along would be that students would be engaged in a reading that is based on habitat. This will lead students to a discussion on habitats and environment of organism. A video clip on habitats will be shown to the class. The entire class will be using both is syncing game. In order to improve social skills, problem solving abilities, and conflict resolutions, a cooperative learning is being included. Round robin brainstorming, jigsaw 2, think, pair, share. These are some of the strategies that will be used for this week. A PowerPoint presentation on biotic and physical environment will be used to explain the concepts. Students will then be placed in pairs to discuss, analyze, and respond to critical thinking questions. In order to complete this course, a series of assessment and strategies will be included: authentic assessment and the traditional assessments, which are summative assessments. Cooperative learning, as mentioned before, is emphasized in this unit of work as a matter of including students in group participation. Class discussion and questions will be included. In order to complete this unit of work for week 2, we have decided that we're going to be including various strategies to incorporate the students' engagement in every single lesson. Thanks, and this will now carry on to the circle of life, food chain, food web, nitrogen, and carbon cycle.
Week 3, we'll be discussing the food chain, describe how one organism feeds on another. Each organism in a food chain is called a link. Each food chain has 2 or more links. A food chain can be represented as the following. You have grass, rabbit, and fox. Now the objective for the students will be that they'll be able to explain the role of each member in the food chain. They'll also describe the energy transfer in a food chain. They will explain the role of decomposers in the recycling of nutrients trapped in living organisms. Along with that, they'll be able to analyze and evaluate the carbon, nitrogen, and water cycle. They'll be able to compare and contrast the role of the carbon and nitrogen cycle in helping to maintain balance in the ecosystem. And lastly, they'll be able to create one of the cycles and explain it in detail in an oral presentation. Now the method of approach in terms of teaching method is the inquiry method. We have, first of all, that we'll pass around cards with name of organism and of course the sun and plant on them. The students will introduce themselves as that organism by showing the card that will be stick on the front of their shirt, and they will stand in a circle. They'll be given a piece of string which they will throw around each other in order to create a food web. Now, doing this, they'll be able to understand from the lesson how the food chain works in order to create the web, which is from the sun to the grass and to the other animals that are around. Once they have done this, they will actually observe and analyze and also make a conclusion of what they had experienced. Along with this will be a diagram or a picture poster that will further explain the concept. Once this is done, the group will be formed and they will be given a package which include all of these organisms or units, or would I say very basic element that could create the food web. Now the students will use this material in the group and they will create the food web according to the information that had been given in its rightful order. From here, we will have that the class will be having certain station when it comes to the water cycle, carbon cycle, and the students will be in different areas that has these information, and information will have picture, video of the cycles. Now, once the students are moving along in their groups of 4, getting that information, when the time is up, they'll be able to share what they had learned from the cycle, as well as be able to create a model and explain it orally for the next class time. And that they would have completed week 3 of this lesson.
Week 4, man's impact on ecosystem is the subtopic. General objectives. Students will be able to discuss how human activities pollute the air, water, and land, identify and explain the different human activities that overexploit the natural resources on Earth, analyze and suggest strategies or different methods that can be used to improve the environment, and finally, conduct a public announcement to inform citizens of their community about human impact on the ecosystem. During Week 4's unit of work, the guided discovery approach will be used. A KWL chart will be posted in front of the class, which explains what you know, what you want to know, and what you have learned. This will be used to help extract information from students. Eliciting responses from students at the same time and then record them under the K section of the chart. The teacher will ask students what they want to know about the concept that will be covered for the week. Suggested questions will be recorded under the W section of the chart. After filling in the K and the W sections in the KWL chart, students will then be instructed to pay attention to a PowerPoint presentation and a video. The teacher will walk around the class with a bag and slips of questions. At different intervals of the PowerPoint and video, questions will be asked using the bag and slips of paper. After which, the teacher will use the Mingle Mingle dance and will be asked to formulate a list of things. Students will be placed into groups using the Mingle Mingle dance and will be asked to formulate a list of things that may be done to save our environment from an individual perspective and from a governmental perspective. Each group will be given a few minutes to share with the class and get additional input from their classmates. Finally, students will be filling in the last section of the KWL chart, which is the L section. Randomly selected students will be asked to state one thing that they have learned about this concept. Finally, in this week, students will be working with their same group members and will be writing a public service announcement to educate their communities on preventing pollution to the environment. They are to use recycled material to do this, thus encouraging the community to reduce, reuse, and recycle. At the end of the unit, students will be given a list of concepts that had been taught in class. They will work in groups of 3 to create a storybook using one of the concepts from the list. Instructions, rubric, and a sample of the project will be shown to students. Once the book is completed, students will be taken to a primary school where they are going to orally share their story and share their book with primary school students.
Strategies, best practice used to explicitly teach concepts and skills. During this unit of work, a series of best practice will be carried out. Questioning, lecture, brainstorming, inquiry teaching, demonstration, group activity, discussion format, infusion method, visual presentation, graphic organizers, handouts, and summative assessments. Students will demonstrate their learning through response to questions, participation in discussion, portfolio, model presentation, oral reports, research reports, completion of worksheets, drawing of biological material using given rules, topic questionnaires, participation in games, and finally 2 unit tests. The culminating activities are: students will be given a list of concepts that they have been taught in class from the cell and environment section. They will be grouped and they are going to create a storybook using one of the concepts from the list. Instructions, rubric, and sample of the project will be shown to the student. Once the storybook is completed, students will be taken to Sunday Hunter's library to share their storybook with the children during show and telling and reading time.